The tax administration bill introduced almost a year ago will likely be promulgated within the next 4 to 6 weeks. But how is this bill likely to affect business? Beric Croome is a tax executive with law firm ENS. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you,
Now,
Candy.
around this time last year, the
Yes.
tax administration bill was tabled in Parliament, as I said.
That's correct.
I suppose, just to give us a bit of background, how was this brought forward? Why was the tax administration bill in fact focused on?
It's been a long process. It started in 2005 when the Minister indicated it was intended to draft this legislation. The purpose is to take all of the administrative provisions from all taxes, all tax statutes other than customs into one place. That achieves consistency of language, that you've got the same provisions applying across all taxes. And also they've indicated that this is really the first part of rewriting the tax law of the country, trying to write it in better English that's more understandable and more current language. And I think largely they've achieved that objective.
And how does it affect business? Why should business be concerned about this?
Well, I was thinking about that driving here, and the one thing is to try and estimate what cost this will have on business is difficult to say. I think the cost comes from education. I think it's important for taxpayers and particularly business to understand the impact of this legislation. There are some changes here which affect business. They need to understand that. But at the same time, it gives revenue some more powers to call for information. For example, we were seeing instances where revenue would call for estimates of income, particularly around provisional tax periods or around revenues year end. How much tax are you going to pay? How is the gold price affecting your business? And legally, the revenue didn't have the power to actually call for revenue estimations at that stage. This law actually allows that to be done. So there's an increased obligation there that instead of just filing tax returns, businesses may be called on it whenever revenue chooses to supply information to revenue as to revenue estimation or to assist revenue in estimating revenue for the Treasury.
Now, if you've got a problem, I suppose, at the moment, and you go onto e-filing and you submit
Yes.
an objection, if you actually don't really know what you're doing, I suppose that objection could be rejected based on the technicality of it for the ordinary person.
Yes.
Would you be able to approach the ombudsman to say, this is my situation?
You raise an important point because in America, for example, there are NGOs that help taxpayers that are not astute in tax affairs. They actually help them with tax returns and they might assist them with other processes with the IRS. I'm not aware of any similar organisation in South Africa, and I think that's something that we need for particularly certain sections of the community that may not understand tax and obligations and what their rights are. But for business, clearly, where things go wrong, they would need to take advice. The Ombud is not there to supply advice to taxpayers. The Ombud is there to assist where revenue has abused its powers, failed to make a decision, has acted aggressively, or there's a glitch in the system that's really causing a problem. So the tax ombud isn't there as an advisor to the taxpayer. The ombud is there as a last port of call to assist in the relationship between taxpayer and tax collector.
Doctor, let's talk about penalties, because in
Yes.
some cases one still sees that a lot of dispute between the taxpayers and the South African Revenue Services because there isn't really clarification on that. Has that changed?
There have been changes in the legislation or in this bill. There are two types of penalties. The one is for what's referred to administrative type penalties where people don't supply tax returns when they should. Those new rules have been enforced and will be carried over into the new legislation, which is determined on a monthly basis. So the longer you take to actually get your tax affairs up to date, the more you're going to pay. You then also have what's referred to in this bill as the understatement penalty, which is where someone submits a tax return and that is incorrect. They don't disclose all their income, for example. At the moment, SARS has the power to increase the tax by 200% of the tax that would otherwise be payable. And it's very difficult to be objective there because they basically start at 200% and then they've got to work it down depending on extenuating circumstances and the particular facts. In this bill, they're proposing a graduated table of penalties which looks at the conduct of the taxpayer. If they're a repeat offender, have they gone forward to revenue before an audit? Because someone in that category should be treated more leniently than someone who is an evader, who's someone who doesn't comply at all. So they've tried to stratify the penalties that will be imposed, particularly for omissions, mistakes, on a particular basis, which I think is an improvement. It follows what happens in some other countries as well.
Well, Dr. Beric, I'll have to leave it at that, but thank you so much for joining us.
And a pleasure.
All right, that was Beric Croome, and he's a tax executive for the law firm Edward Nathanson and Briggs. Thanks for watching.